What's up, everybody? Welcome to Now 5 Wrestling. Comment, like, subscribe, share. Comment, like, subscribe, share. And I'm going to be talking about the Undertaker's interview on the Joe Rogan podcast. And why it was one of the better interviews to start 2021. And it was a controversial interview. And the Undertaker held nothing back how he feels about today's current product and today's current product of the men in wrestling. And Taker was talking about how he believed we're in a world right now where values don't matter, and that in some cases that's true. And he talked about how the current product of WWE is soft, and I agree with it. Undertaker is from a different era. Undertaker, like he said, I'm from the era of when men were men, and how when you went back in the locker room back in the 80s and 90s, you saw wrestlers with pills, guns, steroids, sleeping with this man's wife, boxing out in the back like men, and drawing money. It was a big rock and roll. Cocaine was everywhere, and this era of wrestling is you go in the locker room and there's wrestlers playing PlayStation, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they're playing PlayStation with each other. There's no outside of a few people. There's no urge to really get out of my way. I'm going to the top, and that is pretty much true. And I think that's pretty much true of every wrestling right now. Like even if you look at even at AEW, you look at their product, like you could like the move sometimes in wrestling becomes so convoluted. Like you have a wrestler and he's setting up and you can tell they're all working together to perform this one move that really makes it choreographed. And in WWE's case, some things are too polished, and it's not enough grit. And that's the thing. Undertaker's from an era of grit. Not saying it's not grit now. Guys like Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre, they look like men, and I exclude them. But you got a lot of like the wrestlers are just showing up, to chill to get a check. They're not hungry like the old era, basically Undertaker saying. And then Xavier responded and was like, the locker room has changed, but he said he'd rather have a locker room where people are playing games instead of doing drugs. And I agree with that. But during that Attitude Era in those 80s and 90s, the wrestlers really fought for their spots, and you could tell, and everybody was drawing money. And then you have the generational gap that happened. Undertaker, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, The Rock, they all came and went, but not really too many of them ushering the new generation over. I guess you say Batista and John Cena was there. Batista and John Cena became movie stars and were gone. And Undertaker worked with Roman, The Rock worked with a couple guys, but they never really got the next generation ready. And that's when we have this generational gap in wrestling where even I heard even on Conan, I remember Conan and Disco Inferno talk, and how they said they remember going to after the show, we're going to the strip club, we're going to get some hoes, some bitches, and how it's different where they went to the Jericho cruise ship, and you see the marks, like the fans playing video games with the wrestlers. And I'm gonna be honest, he's kind of right. I could never picture myself playing video games with the Undertaker during that era, or video games with Hulk Hogan. No way. But this era, you can play video games with the wrestlers, and it's I think it does tarnish them. It doesn't make them box office stars doing that. Roman Reigns, I can't picture playing video games with him. And even Roman's great, and he has an edge and a toughness to him. Like Roman doesn't play games, and that's great. So it is that generational gap. And Undertaker's a different wrestler. Like he said, he almost lost his eye and performed on the road 270 days a year. Like we had to wear the Phantom of the Opera mask because his nerve, he broke his orbital bone. Still kept wrestling where the nerve was on the eye and almost lost the eye, and still kept wrestling. If an injury happens like that now, the wrestler will be taken off TV. Undertaker would wrap bulletproof vests around his broken ribs and still go to the ring. Not too many wrestlers are going to do that now because they don't have that heart. Some do, but not many. Taker said he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Raise your hand," and Taker did it. And he said the doctor looked at him perplexed and said, "Your arm and shoulder is so bad. I can't believe you're doing it. Undertaker was so used to pain. He was doing shit that doctors said was impossible. And when it comes to this generation, they're having a hard time completing their legacy because they're too busy just trying to shoot and become a star in this glossed up wrestling because wrestling is more prettier and glossy. Where Undertaker worked for a legacy and earned everybody's respect, and that's a big difference. Like Taker wasn't there for just the money when he got it. He was there to the job. He was there for the town. It could be 10 or 100 people. I'm putting on the best of the best of my abilities, injured or not. And you just don't get that sometimes in wrestling. Sometimes you got guys just going through the motions, or sometimes you got them setting up convoluted moves where it hurts the whole product in generally. Like, why would I run and do 15, 25 flips at you when, realistically, I could punch you in your mouth? And that's the problem. A lot of the new era fans have turned wrestling into a video game, Super Smash Brothers, and wrestling is not supposed to be that. Wrestling is supposed to, still look legit. But now we're in the era where we want to see acrobats and almost, and you don't need to do all that. Roman Reigns comes to the ring. Roman Reigns doesn't leave his feet. He puts you in a guillotine choke, a legit move that can take you out. He throws punches. He spears you. He tackles you. He brutalizes you. And then you got some wrestlers, and there's nothing wrong with doing half spots, but now we're in the era where, like Jr. even said, you got 15 wrestlers waiting like this to catch a person to do a 15 450 490 somersault onto you, and that hurts the product. You gotta do storytelling, and like Undertaker said, he could say this because he's not under WWE contract. He has a legend contract. So he's still getting paid by WWE, but it lets him be a little bit more freely. And if I was WWE, I'd want Undertaker helping in NXT to get the new generation going and teach you don't, a big man with big man. I don't want to see a big man doing a 450. If a big man's in there and he grabs you and chokes you, you lose. I don't need to see a person the size of Big Show doing a 450, or a frog splash. Let a big man be a big man. And now we're at the era where we're seeing that wrestling's turning into Marvel versus Capcom, and that's okay sometimes. But when you overdo it, it can be a bad thing. I like ice cream, but you can't ice cream every day. You gotta switch it up. Like, you gotta become the most of the guys that got over had compelling characters. The Fiend's over. Why? He doesn't flip. He doesn't do none of that crazy stuff. He has a compelling character. The Rock didn't do all that crazy shit. The Rock said, if you smell a couple smacks to the face, Rock bottom. He compelled you. He talked you in the building. Dusty Rhodes talked you in the building. The Undertaker made us believe that he was a dead man. Undertaker, his fighting style was always legit. Brock Lesnar, it gets no more legit than that. He'll just beat the shit out of you, and that's why, Brock's looked upon that way. Taker's looked upon that way, and then you got some of the new era. It's a big gap, and it's like the men are men now, but the men were more manly back then. And it's gonna be interesting when Taker comes around how that main roster locker room looks at him. But they can say whatever they want. Taker has forgotten more shit than this new generation has learned about wrestling. And I'm gonna be honest, the only person that probably know more about the WWE is Vince McMahon or Triple H. And Triple H got himself over. I never seen Triple H fly off the top rope and go through an announce table. I never seen Triple H do a moonsault. What got Triple H over? His character, the way he talked you in a building. You believed he would beat your ass. We thought JR, yeah, JR, people like you. You believed it. And that's what we're missing. We don't got the guys don't have the energy to talk you in a building. So instead of doing a wrestling match and working a leg, they're doing trapeze work. And that's why I'm so happy about Will Ospreay in New Japan. Like, he's a great athlete, does all those flips, but his match with Okada was a match with two men fighting each other. So it's like, you gotta believe all that flipping shit need to come down for a little bit and get these guys in the ring and work the neck, work a headlock, work the leg. You can't just have a bunch of 450s, frog splash, 380s, 490s. It has to come to a point where you can just, like Bret Hart said, just work the leg and put a choke on a guy. You know, so the Undertaker podcast. If you haven't gone and seen it, check it out. It was great. Ooh, rest in peace. Thank you guys. Comment, like, subscribe. Peace.